What's up guys, and welcome to my next how-to video on this Become the Boss series. I'm Kerapak, and today we're going to be looking at Zuk and how to get yourself that sweet cape along with unlocking the coveted hard mode. Now if you've ever found yourself in Dev's office thinking how the Zuk did I get here, then fear no longer, because this guide will cover everything you need to know for getting your first kill. For gear, we're going to be using basic necro gear. Similar to the last guide, it's all things that are easily accessible to all players. We won't be using any perks and only basic jewelry items, including the Zo ring, which increases damage against obsidian creatures and is a reward for the fight kill quest. We will be using a god book, but the cheapest one we can get being a jazz book, and I would highly recommend getting yourself the Nexus to store your runes and ecto. For the inventory, we will be bringing a couple of overloads, a good amount of restores, plenty of blubbers and brews, and a few Vaughn bombs to help with damage. You'll notice a ring switch too, as the toggle ring we're using doesn't affect Zuk, so just for a bit more damage when fighting him. Some extra things for the invent that might be useful but aren't necessary are powders of penance, which will help keep your prayer up throughout the fight, meaning you barely need to bring restores and have more room for food. Downside is they're expensive and also their effect is lost upon death, so if you're practicing you might cost yourself a lot of money unless you brought the Crux upgrade from the shop in Al Kharid that prevents it being lost on death. Super prayer renewals can be a good alternative if you want some passive prayer regen. As well, you can also bring an enhanced Excalibur for some additional healing throughout the fight. Now just to cover off very quickly, if your toggle ring is out of charge, right click it and teleport to the main plaza and then speak to the wizard that will be stood in the middle. Right click and just press recharge. It will cost you a few toggle, but it's obviously well worth it for the fight, as it will give you a massive damage buff against all of the Zuk creatures. Moving on to Familiar, I'll be using a Hellhound and putting a few scrolls into him, allowing me to keep him topped up throughout the fight. If you didn't know what a Hellhound does, he absorbs a portion of the damage you take, reducing its own life points in place. You can restore its health by using one of its scrolls. You can alternatively use a yak, but I'm not going to encourage that, as if you're using enough food to get through a yak, you're likely doing something wrong. Next is requirements. For this fight I didn't use any damage boosting prayers or soul split, so you will simply need 43 for the overheads. Next we will need vampirism or ages for the passive healing or damage reduction throughout the fight. I would also recommend a high enough herbalore level to make overloads. If you don't have this, then be aware you'll need to bring both an extreme necro and extreme defense potion in its place, which can be bought on the Grand Exchange. The final requirement is Greater Bone Shield, unlocked at 73 Necro, allowing us to cast defensives without needing a shield in our hand. Next up is recommendations, things which will be helpful but definitely not needed. First is completing the Brink of Extinction quest, which will allow you to make obsidian armor. You can wear one piece of this, which will reduce the damage you take from Tsar monsters. Using the donation point at the fight cauldron, you can increase the amount in which it reduces, and further donations will extend the duration of this buff up to 1 hour. Next is Soul Split and Sorrow, which will make the fight easier, allowing you to heal in moments you're not taking too much damage, and also increase the damage you deal, which is important for phasing up before the challenges after every fourth wave. Then we have perks. None were used in this guide, but things like Devoted and Enhanced Devoted are massive food savers at Zuk, so if you can get them, then definitely go for it. Similarly, basic perks on your weapons can help with putting out damage. Finally, we're going to just have a quick look at archaeology. Relics which would buff your damage and survivability are always useful. For just starting archaeology, you also get a relic which gives you an additional 500 health, so if you haven't done so already, definitely get that. With all that out of the way, let's get into the arena and the fight. This is the Zuk arena, and I don't want to overcomplicate things by scribbling all over it and showing you really complex pictures that you're not going to understand. All you need to know is we'll be spending most of our time next to Zuk on the northwest part of the arena, or on the odd occasion going down to the southeast. I will clearly state this during the kill, so don't worry too much about it right now. I could also explain all of the mechanics of everything that's going to happen, but the reality is it's best to be shown, because otherwise it's going to go in one ear and out the other. So with that being said, let's get into the fight. Now to start the fight, either speak with Zuk and offer to fight, or right click and select challenge. For the first wave, we want to stand just northeast of where we spawn in. We will be praying melee for this wave and the next 4, as this is all we're going to encounter. On this wave, these fat little lads will spawn, and they're not very strong, so just use some AoEs to kill them, and don't worry about running around the arena to get to them, just stand where I am now. What you'll see is that two small bats are going to spawn just south and they'll get stuck on this rock. That's important because if they attack you, they will drain your prayer. Once you've dealt with the fat dudes, attack the bats to finish them off, and then we can move on to the next wave. Next wave will be a combo of rangers and meleeers. Best advice I can give for all waves in this fight is kill whatever you're not praying against first. So as you can see, I'm praying melee in order to reduce the damage I take and going to kill the rangers first, or at least try to. I do accidentally leave one with a low HP here. But once they're dead, you'll be able to see that a large melee guy is coming from below me. There's nothing special about these guys. They don't have any mechanics other than that they hit quite high and they have quite a lot of HP. Just use some AoE stuff, like here I'm using the scythe to kill the bat at the same time and get it down, and you shouldn't take too much damage on this wave at all. Now if you do find you're taking a little bit more than you'd like, just simply use a reflect to half the damage that you're taking. Coming up to the third wave, we are going to see 4 large melee minions spawn on each end of the room. You just want to stand in the very centre and wait for them to surround you. Then you want to use Threads of Fate, followed by a volley of souls, and then a weapon spec. This should allow you to kill all of them fairly quickly, as you can see in this video. If you are worried about the damage that they're going to do, you can use a devotion when they're on the way in. That way, when they die, it will extend your devotion, and you shouldn't take any damage at all. Next, again, because we're not praying against them, we're going to kill the rangers. You can switch the prayer to range if need be, if you do find you're taking too much damage from them, and then the other one will remain trapped behind the rock whilst you kill the one on the western side. Head on back over, kill this ranger, and then finish off by killing the little minion, which will be in front of you. After this, we're going to have the melee phase, where it's going to be nothing but those little melee dudes that spawn. We're looking for the ones that have 25,000 HP. There will be 3 of them. One at the north, one at the southwest, and one at the southeast. Deal with the one at the north first. Use a stun on him in order to break his shield, and then just slowly whittle him down. Once he's dead, you then want to use a stun on the one behind you. Again, slowly whittle him down. Don't use too many big abilities, because we're going to be saving those to use on Zuk when we need to do damage to him in just a moment. So once he's dead, we're going to move on down to the southwest to kill the last one. Now, the stuns that you'll have available for you in Necromancy will be your Weapon Spec or Soul Strike. Now, once this minion dies, you'll notice a little action button is going to spawn on your screen, which is what we're going to need to press in order to start up the fight with Zuk. So once he dies, you'll see it's going to come on the left-hand side, just underneath my buffs. And once that pops up, we're going to go and stand in front of Zuk, and then we're going to press it when we're ready to deal damage to him. There we go. So now we're going to launch a Vulnerable Bomb, use Volley, use 2 fingers, and then a Weapon Spec in order to just get his health down to that 50,000 threshold. Continue just using regular basics if you're not there after using those bigger hits. So here we do actually manage to get the 1 cycle, which is nice and easy. And then we're going to move on to the challenge wave. So in this challenge wave, he's going to spawn 5 minions. I'm going to use a Threads of Fate here, and then attack one of them with the volley of souls to kill all 3 there. I'm then going to turn around and use a finger, which will hit the 2 behind me, leaving them quite low, and I'm going to finish them off with basics. It's super easy with Necro. There's no need for, you know, the greater chain that you'd use for magic or anything like that. It's a very easy thing to clear. Now moving on to this wave, it is going to be our first Jad wave. We want to sit in this northwest corner that I spoke about, where the rangers are going to spawn. Now for the next 4 waves, it's going to be mainly rangers, so we want to pray range that whole time. We're just going to use AoE abilities, try and bring them down, but also try not to walk too far east, as you will free Jad and he will come walking at you. Now as you can see, I am hugging this rock just here. The reason is it gets those 2 big melee minions stuck behind it. I don't have to worry about them too much there. I can continue praying range and deal with them when I'm ready. Now that my Threads of Fate is back up, I'm going to head on out, use some AoE abilities and burst them down with my weapon spec. Next I'm going to focus on the bat, because obviously that will drain my prayer, and then I'm going to kill the big dude that stood there while he's stuck behind the rock. And again, I don't need to worry about him dealing any damage because he's just stuck there. So you can use this if you've got the Vampirism Aura to get some health back, or if you've obviously got Soul Split, you can activate that here as well. Now that we're ready, we're going to move on down to Jad. I'm going to use an Invoke Death in order to execute him at low health. And if you fought Jad before, you should know what you're doing here. Now, as you can see, I accidentally turned my prayer off then rather than doing what I was supposed to. But if he goes on his back legs, you want to pray magic. And if he goes and stamps his 2 front feet, it's going to be ranged. But again, I should think you've done that at this point, especially those looking to get a Zuk Cape. You probably fought him a few times in the fight kill. Now, once he's dead, we're then going to kill the bat that stood next to him. At this point, that shouldn't have been able to got to you unless you walked too far west and you got free, but not too much of a problem. Now, what I said earlier on, in that when something is attacking you, you want to fight what you're not praying against. So here we're going to kill the mage first and the bat second, because we are obviously praying ranged. Then we want to deal with the rangers that are all around us. So once that bat's dead, we can start focusing on the rangers. Now, as you can see, I've walked up into the very top of the corner, and that should start to pull everything towards me. I'm then going to use a Threads of Fate and a volley to kill that group of people to the south of me, and then I'm going to use a weapon spec to finish them off. Then I'm going to focus on the big chunky looking dude on out of the rangers, because the chunkier ones actually do progressively more damage the longer they're stood still, so you're best off focusing them just to reduce the amount of damage you're taking. So as we can see here, it's kept the melee minion stuck behind the rock at the bottom. That way we can just walk on down, not have to worry about him hitting us, and kill him off quite easily. If you've got Soul Split, you can switch to that now, get a bit of health back in between waves. As for the next two waves, we will have a melee minion stuck down here. Now that wave's done, we're going to go back into the northwest corner, keep our ranged prayer up, and deal with the mages that spawn first. There's going to be one that spawns on the east and west sides of the room, so deal with the one closest to you, and then when the other one's walked over a little bit, deal with them second. Obviously, walking too far to the east, you're going to bring that melee minion out, so try to deal with them once they've walked to you. Then you just want to be using AoE abilities. Threads of Fate and Weapon Spec work really well, and focus on getting the big dudes down. There will be, I think there's 5 of them that spawn in this wave, and as I say, the longer they stand still, the more damage they'll rack up. So do try to get them to move if they have been stood still for a while. Now you'll see I'm hooking this rock here. The reason is it will keep those two stuck behind it. It'll ensure the melee minion stays at the very end, and also that ranger as well doesn't manage to get out and get to me. So now we are going to walk to try and get that ranger minion to walk to us. So if you just walk to the far west side of the room, he will then path towards you, and you can kill him without the melee minion moving from its spot. So again, we're just going to finish him off. He should be at 0 stacks here as well because we got him to walk. And once he's dead, we'll move on to the melee minion. Again, once we fight this melee minion, you can switch to Soul Split, get yourself some health back. If obviously you don't have that, your Vampirism aura will be getting you some health back anyway. So yeah, just damage him down slowly. Now that he's dead, we're moving on to the next wave, which is going to be the Ranger wave. Nothing but Rangers will spawn, and we're going to be looking out for the ones with 25,000 HP, located at the north, the southwest, and the southeast, same as the melee range. To break their healing shield, we do need to use a threshold on them. So with Necromancy, the easiest one to cast is going to be Bloat. It's only a 20% threshold, so it can be cast quite early on. You don't need to stack up a lot of adrenaline in order to actually get that off. So once you've dealt with the first two, using Invoke Death to speed it up a little bit, head to the one that will be stuck in the back corner. And on this one, you just want to build up some soul stacks, try and get some necrosis stacks. Again, just be prepared for how we need to go and challenge and do some damage to Zuk. Now, we're not going to look to phase Zuk by dumping everything on him. The reason being, the challenge wave after this, we're going to need high damaging abilities to get through it. So we're going to use some basic stuff. We're going to use a volley. We're going to use, command skeleton. We'll use things like bloat. We will obviously switch our ring over as well for that extra damage. And we're just going to do standard things. Now, don't be too worried if you don't phase him like I don't on this run. Just focus on whittling him down, but not using up those important stacks. As we can see, he's reset the wave, so we are just going to do that wave over. Same thing, use blow, invoke death, take out the ones with 25,000 HP. If you stood where I am, the one on the southwest will get stuck there and not come towards you, so you'll have to walk backwards and get to that one afterwards. So now that that's finished, we're going to walk up to Zuk, and again, we're going to use some basics because we're not wanting to use up all our stacks. We do need them for this wave, so I'm just going to finish off this last remaining bit of HP with some of the basic necromancy attacks. And as soon as he hits that threshold, we are going to move on to the challenge wave. Now on this one, the minion can only be damaged with abilities over 3,000. So we're going to want to use Invoke Death, a Vulnerability Bomb, 2 fingers from those 12 necrosis stacks, a weapon spec,
and then another finger with all the adrenaline that we have. That should easily kill the minion. I'm in tier 70 gear with no perks, so if I can do it in that, then I'm pretty confident that you'll be able to do it in what you're using. Now moving on, we're going to go down to the southeast. A bat will spawn as soon as you arrive. Just kill it when you get there. Then hug the corner of this rock. What it will do is make those mages at the top walk down towards you, so you can kill them without having to walk too far forwards. This is another Jad wave, and 2 Jads spawn at the top of the arena. But if you're down in this corner, you don't have to worry about them until you're ready. So just keep on hugging that corner, making those mages walk down to you, and deal with them obviously slowly, as you haven't got to worry about the other minions on the left, as they are stuck behind a rock as well. And when you're ready, cast Threads of Fate. Go outside, use a volley, and then use a weapon spec. Try and hug the border of that rock, because as long as you do that, it will not make Jad move from the spot that he's in. Now get prepared to fight Jad, cast the things that you need to, make sure your potions are topped up, use an Invoke Death, and just walk north. Don't go out, obviously, west or anything like that, because you can then aggro the other Jad. So here, we're just obviously prayer swapping, slowly getting him down. There is a mage that stood to his right hand side, but we don't need to worry too much about that, as it is only the one of them. As soon as Jad is dead, we're going to go on then to focus on the mage that stood to the right hand side. Quickly kill him. And now we're going to go over to the other Jad. Now before I go there, I'm going to do a little trick here. I've disabled my prayers, and I'm just going to press resonance while I'm walking over there. That way, the first attack that Jad does heals me for full health. I can then just obviously switch my prayers back on, and I've got a free heal. So that's something that you can do, but only do it if Jad and you are the only two in the arena. If you were to use it and there was another minion, you'd obviously have your resonance sniped by them. So always be careful when doing that trick. Make sure it is just you and Jad. Now, as you can see, I did miss one of the prayers there, took a little hit, but we carry on. That's 2 for 2 now that I've cocked up on. So now we're entering the mage phases. Here you want to stand back on that northwestern side, deal with the bat that spawns, and then again the things that we're not praying against. So the big chunky rangers that are going to spawn on the west and east sides of the arena, deal with the one near you first. The other one will get stuck behind the rock, so then you can switch to your magic prayer and deal with the guys around you. Obviously use things like Threads of Fate, use Reflect, use Devotion, anything at all that will help you. A little tip with Devotion is that if you were to use it when you kill something, it will extend its duration. Now you can see here that I've left that ranger standing still for a bit, and I'm still praying magic. So you'll see him hit me quite heavy. When I realise that, I do get into focusing him. That's a mistake on my behalf. But just switch to the range prayer when you are dealing with these guys, because they can hit 1 to 2,000 really heavy hits. Now we're going to move on to the mages, and it's important not to panic when you're at low health as well, because as long as you are dealing with things one by one, you're not getting swamped. There's no reason why you're going to get KO'd. You can take things quite easy, be quite relaxed with it. Just stay up in that corner and use that rock as your protection. So if you do take a big hit, you can step backwards behind it, stop things attacking you, eat up, whatever you need to do. Now here, the next wave, again, we're dealing with the rangers first. One will spawn at the very north, and the other one which spawns at the south will get stuck behind a rock, so we don't need to think about him too much. Then we're going to get straight onto focusing the mages. We're going to stick up in this corner, try and get things to group up as much as we can. Then we're going to use a Threads of Fate, and we're going to use our weapon spec and volley. That way then we can wipe out as many of them as possible and take as little damage as possible. Now that they're all dead, we're going to move on to kill this last little mage that was on his own. And then we're going to get these two out of the same spot that they're currently stuck in. So we're just going to walk down towards the south one, and the one on the east will walk around and path towards us. Deal with the one south first. Once he's dead, deal with the one on the east. Now, as you can see, the ranger is still stuck behind that rock at the bottom, and he's been stood still for a very long time, which means his stacks are going to have racked up quite high at this point. Now, I do have a devotion active, so when I walk towards him, I pray range, but I realise that's going to run out soon, so I'm going to get him to walk. The way we can do that is just walk far to the east. He'll then path from behind the rock, and we can go back to attacking him. We do want to clear those stacks, because otherwise he will hit you for 1,000 through prayer, so it's best that we clear them to prevent having to take too much damage in this. Now we're going to move on to the magic phase, where it's just mages that spawn. It's a really easy one to deal with. You just need to invade their personal space, get right up inside that bubble that's around them, and start dealing damage. The bubble will drain just for you being stood inside it, so you haven't got to worry about them healing, and again just use basic things and then invoke death to slowly whittle them down. You can use things like devotion throughout this wave as well to reduce the damage you're taking from all the minions around you, and the reflect is also super useful. So moving on to the next one, we're going to stand in the bubble, reduce that shield, get rid of the healing, and slowly take him down. Now, On the last one, we're not going to look to use too many stacks or big hitting abilities because again, we want to save them for when we go and deal damage to Zuk. So I'm going to make sure I've got full volley for this. I'm going to make sure I've got full necrosis. I want to make sure my minions are spawned before I go and attack Zuk, you know, that sort of stuff. Now that he's dead, just make sure that obviously your overload and everything's active. You know, you haven't got to worry about too many things. Quickly summon your minions if they have died and get onto it. Press the action button, throw a vulnerability bomb, and start launching off things that do not require adrenaline. So if you've got full necrosis stacks, get 2 fingers in. You can use a weapon spec at the end of that, as it does only use a small amount, but do make sure you recover that adrenaline afterwards. Reason being, we're going to move on to a challenge wave after this that does require you to have 100% adrenaline, which is really easy. All you got to do is just not use abilities. When this wave starts, Barricade will not last long enough to cover the whole thing, so we're actually going to resonance the first hit. So pop a resonance, the first one will hit you for 0. You then use Barricade as the other one is on its way to you, and this Barricade will last long enough to cover all 3 abilities that are on their way. And just like that, we've cleared that phase without taking a single bit of damage. Now we're on the Triple Jad phase. We're going to head straight down to the southeast side of the room and hug this rock. That will cause the southernmost Jad to walk towards us, and we haven't got to worry about the other 2 as they will be stuck behind rocks. We can then just deal with this one in our own time, using the Invoke Death and other basic abilities, and then we can walk north and deal with that one and the same one on the west hand side. Very, very similar to the last Jad wave that we faced. They'll both be stuck in exactly the same position that they were then. Just coming to the end of this Jad phase, we're going to have Harakan spawn. He's going to spawn on either the east or west side, so just stand in the middle and wait for that to happen. You want to use an Invoke Death, make sure your minions are spawned, just be in a position where you're ready to fight something. Then you want to move on towards him. You're going to cast obviously your standard abilities, do damage to him, use a vulnerability bomb. He does negate bits of his damage depending on how many tentacles are in the arena, but it's not something you need to particularly worry about, just continue damaging him. Now he will launch a piece of lava up into the air, and that will be notified by the screen doing a little shake. If it does hit you like it did with me there, it will drain your adrenaline down to 0 and also slow it down on how much you gain when you're using basics. So it's good not to get hit by that, because otherwise it's just going to slow this kill down. So do move out of the way of those. He will only launch 2 per phase, so you haven't got to worry about it too much. But after a short break, he's going to go for a swim. Whilst he's under the lava, you just want to attack the tentacles that are around the arena. Rather than just standing there doing nothing, you'll reduce as much damage as you're taking by killing them off, and it also reduces the damage reduction that Harakan has when he comes back out. So yeah, just do some basic abilities, build up some stacks, and while he's under there, he is also going to be launching those lava balls that he was before. You just simply want to move out the way of that, and then you'll see where that message just come up on my screen that he's about to bombard me, which will then launch lava out in an X shape where you were stood. So you just want to either move north, west, south, east, in one of the straight linear directions, and you'll completely avoid that ability. It doesn't take much effort, and if you are worried about it hitting you, you can simply use a dive or a surge to get right out of the way of it. So we're just going to continue walking around the arena, killing tentacles here and there, looking out for those lava pools coming. Again, they are notified by a small screen shake, and as you can see, he's doing a big one now. We're just going to walk to the east, the west there, and we'll completely negate that ability. After the second X attack, he's going to come out of the lava, ready for you to finish off. Now, obviously, if he's quite close to death, he'll be executed around 30,000 HP if you've used Invoke Death. You don't want to use too many of your big abilities because you're going to be fighting Zuk in a second, so you may as well save it for that. So, now that he's dead, we have to fight Zuk. And before we get into the fight, I do want to show you some of his attacks. Now, for the first one, Zuk will say, "Break beneath me and put a bleed on you." All you need to do is press freedom to clear this. Next, we have the Burn or Sear attack, where he'll hit you with 2 magic hits that start to drain your constitution. To stop this happening, we just need to move a few tiles, and the easiest way to do this is to use a search. So we can search through Zuk, wait a second, and then his next ability we can avoid by using another surge. That way then we completely avoid the Quake ability and also remove the debuff. Now, after a few attacks, Zuk will say something like "be gone" or "die" and then drop a bomb on your head. To avoid this, just use Resonance. That will completely negate all damage it deals. Next, we have Pizza Time. You want to use Freedom or Anticipation before he moves you, just to prevent that brief stun. Then you want to use something like Dive or Surge to head towards Zuk. Next, simply just walk under his legs into the segment you need to be at. We're going to deal with the same minions that we've dealt with throughout the fight, so use a stun to break the shield of this one, a threshold to break the shield of the next one, and get in the bubble of the mage in order to kill it. Now you want to stand close to Zuk's legs, that way then you haven't got to walk far on each time the segment changes. As you can see, I just walked underneath his legs to get to the next bit. One useful tip as well is using Invoke Death on these minions, as it will execute them at 5000 HP. That way you haven't got to worry about doing as much damage to get them all killed. Also, putting a bloat on them at the start will mean that that will continue to deal damage when you walk away, hopefully finish them off as you head between mobs. Now just finish off the last mage. Once he's dead, you then want to click onto Zuk in order to target him and start using a few abilities to build up some stacks. Throw a vulnerability bomb, and then when you're ready, press the action button in order to continue the fight. Now that we've covered that, we're going to go on to the fight where we left off. And we're just clicking on Zuk and building up some stacks. Now I make a mistake here and I don't move to the middle of the arena when Zuk stands up. You should do this in order to make sure he does the correct ability. He will use a break beneath me for the first attack, but I'm too far away, so he actually uses the Begone ability. Now we're going to count auto attacks here. There's 1, 2, and 3. So here comes the Sear or Burn ability. We don't actually have to do anything straight away, but we are going to want to use a Surge at some point within the next 3 attacks. So as a second attack, I've just used the Surge, and now we're waiting for the third attack, and now he's going to do the Quake. We're going to wait for his sword to come down, and then we are going to surge through him. That way then we avoid all of those ruptures on the ground. Then we're just going to drink a Restore to get back the constitution that he's already drained, and just continue doing damage. After that third attack is just done, we're going to use a Resonance. That will negate that damage, and then we're going to go 1, we're going to go 2, 3, and then 4. And on the fourth one, we're going to use Freedom or Anticipation just to prevent that stun that's about to happen. And now it's pizza time. So here, just move forwards towards him, walk through his legs to the minion, and then we want to use a stun and invoke death. Blow, make sure your minions are spawned. You can take a bit more time with this first minion to get set up, as I do here, and then let the bloat tick over as you walk over to the second one. It's not too important. So we're going to walk through his legs. You can see the bloat just continues ticking, doing damage. Then we're going to focus on doing a bit of damage to the ranger, so cast a bloat in order to break his shield, and then use an invoke death. And you can see that the melee dude behind me isn't dead, so we're just going to cast a few abilities that way. And then I'm going to use a weapon spec to kill the ranger. Then we're going to do a quick surge over. I was a little bit late then on moving, so surge can be helpful. You just need to make sure you click in the right direction. Stand in the bubble of the mage, and we're just going to again use an invoke death, use a bloat, and slowly start to take the mage down. Now here, build up a few stacks, press the button on the screen, and that will restart the fight. So now we're going to count again. There's 1, there's 2, and there is 3. So next, now we know we've got the Break Beneath Me ability coming. So once he's cast it, you want to then use Freedom afterwards to clear that bleed. There's 1 attack, there's 2 attacks, and there's 3 attacks. So now we know we've got Sear or Burn coming. We haven't got to do anything just yet. And then we're going to count all attacks again. So there's 1, there's 2. We're going to use a Surge to clear some of those stacks. There's a third auto attack. And then we're going to wait for his sword to hit the ground. And then we're going to do another Surge. That's all of those stacks cleared. Drink a Restore. And that's the second attack. That's the third attack. And then we're going to use a Resonance. And that will negate that completely. Now again, we're counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Time to use either Freedom or Anticipation as the pizza phase is about to begin. So here we go again. We're just going to use a dive towards his legs. We're going to walk past him. We're going to use a stun on the golem. We're also going to put a bleed onto him and an invoke death. And just slowly whittle his health down. Walk through Zuk's legs. And we're going to use a blow to the first ability on this ranger, along with an invoke death. We're going to use things like Commanded Our Skeleton. basic abilities, and just bring him down to less than 5,000 HP. Walk through Zuk's legs, and we're now into the next section. Now these sections are shaped like triangles, which means that point closest to Zuk, it looks like it's on fire almost, but it's not. So as long as you're close to Zuk, you're pretty safe on walking through that bit. Once he's dead, we're going to press the action button. Once we've got a couple stacks, use a vulnerability bomb, and we're going to continue doing damage. Now an important thing to note here is that if Zuk is close to 100,000 HP, he will sort of start again on his ability cycle. So if he's just used a break beneath me and you reset his health, he will then use another one. But here we're going to use freedom. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to get the sear or suffer or burn, whatever he likes to say. 1, 2, and there's a surge. 3. We're going to wait for his sword to hit the ground, and then we're going to surge again. Nice and easy. 2, 3. Now his health has dropped below 100,000 HP, so there's another break beneath me. There's a freedom. So it's 1, 2, 3. And here comes the sear, suffer, burn. There is suffer. 1, 2, 3. And there's a zoom, and then we're going to wait for the hit, and then another zoom just to avoid it.
Now, if you do zoom a bit too far, you can get hit with a magic hit, and that did happen to me earlier in the fight, but don't worry too much. Now, here's you're going to drop below the 30,000 HP, and that will be an execute due to the invoked death, and you will have earned yourself a igneous stone to make your Zuk cape, and also have done it flawless in order to unlock the hard mode.
So I hope you found this guide helpful, and at a later stage I do intend on doing a hard mode Zuk guide for those of you that want to get the combination cape. But obviously let me know if there's any demand for that later down the line. But as for now, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.